All right, so I just heard something unique that absolutely fits what I saw when watching the NFL draft. I'm gonna bring you back. It's day one of the NFL draft, and there is a live look in the Chargers war room. And you see Jim Harbaugh with that confused look on his face. He often has it, all right? He's not actually confused, but he's looking like something's trying to get done. People are on different phones. Everything's going on. He's like, what's going on? Everybody's kind of like, what's going on? And then in the last 30 seconds, they call, and they actually make their pick, right? And it's Omarion Hampton, and he is the running back that you selected with the number 22 pick in the NFL draft. Well, it has come out now that the Chargers almost traded that pick to the Detroit Lions. Now, there has to be something that has to be said on here. If you're new to this channel, my name's Craig. Me and my buddy Chris, we started this channel a little over a year ago because we wanted to follow this guy to the West Coast. We love Jim Harbaugh, but we are Lions fans. And here is where I'm here to say that I think the Chargers almost made a big mistake, and I want you to let me know, what would you rather have? Traded down or drafted Omarion Hampton? I'm just going to ask the question. Would you have traded down or drafted Omarion Hampton? I'm going to make the case that you should have drafted Omarion Hampton. You can make a case the other way. But let's look at what the trade could have looked like. Let's kind of see what it would have been, and then we'll go from there. All right, we'll go from there and see what would have happened. Ultimately, they didn't make the trade. So here's what we had. All right, we're seeing that the Lions likely tried and failed to trade down with the Chargers. All right, we know that Dan Graziano of ESPN said that Brad Holmes said the Lions tried trading down in the first round for an edge rusher and were unsuccessful. Based on what we know about the Chargers situation, it's pretty clear the Lions were trying to trade down with them. Then, later in the draft, all right, the Atlanta Falcons trade into the number 26 pick to take Pierce, who is the next edge rusher taken after the Chargers pick. All right, so in order to see what it looks like, and by the way, everybody made fun of the Falcons for how much they gave up. All right, they selected James Pierce Jr. at number 26 overall. They got, and it must have been Pierce that the Lions were targeting, which I think would be very unique, but I don't think that's the kind of guy we go for. All right, they traded the pick 46 this year, a 7th rounder, and a next year's first for the number 26 pick and a 3rd round pick. So you can't ignore the 3rd round pick. So essentially what they're doing is they gave up a 1st round pick next year for a 1st round pick this year, and they swapped a 3rd and 2nd round pick. How do I want to put this? The 7th round pick is inconsequential, if I can be completely honest. Not a lot of stuff. That's where you're finding special teams player, which is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but Harbaugh loves finding special teams players as UDFAs. So, I'm not saying it's not important. 7th round picks are important, but rarely do they pan out to be starting caliber players. If you're lucky, they become a rotational backup. All right, so in other words, if they were have to traded out of this pick, they would have gone and they would have traded away the 26th pick. They would not have picked until the Lions' 2nd pick. If they were trading with the Lions, there's no way they could have gotten up unless they traded back up. The Lions' 2nd pick was number 60, and it probably would have been a similar offer. Lions probably would have offered number 60 and a 1st rounder next year. That's my guess of what the pick would have looked like. That's as good as I can get. Or maybe it was a 2nd and a 2nd rounder this year, a 2nd rounder next year, and a 3rd rounder next year. Those are some of the things. But here's what I'm saying to you. When you went out and got Omarion Hampton, there were 2 running backs. One running back was in a tier of his own. Unfortunately, it went to your rival, the Raiders, and that was Ashton Jeanty. But there were many people out there, and I'm not so sure I'm not one of them. I think Ashton Jeanty, when I look at him, I think his ceiling and what he looks like is Emmitt Smith. I got to be honest. I just do. But when I look at Omarion Hampton and I see just the massive size that he has, There are flashes of some of the great big backs in the NFL. I'm not saying he's King Henry or anything like that, but there are flashes of it. So when I say they made a big mistake, the question is, you need a running back. Najee Harris is not a Super Bowl running back. You don't win a Super Bowl with Najee Harris as your bell cow. You need someone explosive. So let's look and see who else would have been on the board at number 60. Maybe Cam Scatterbo. Is there a huge gap there? Dylan Sampson, Caleb Johnson, which is basically Amarian Hampton without the explosiveness. That's what that is. Maybe Travion Henderson was gone. Quinshon Judkins was gone. I think Caleb Johnson was actually gone as well. RJ Harvey may have been gone. He might not have gone till the third round. Damian Martinez, DJ Giddens, Devin Neal. Look at all these guys. This was a loaded running back class. There's no doubt. You could have found a running back that is starter caliber, or especially in the new way running backs are used, which are in a platoon, right? Or two-headed monster. You absolutely could have found a starting running back in that. However, they would not have been close to what Amarian Hampton is or could be. All right? You had pick number 22, you took Hampton. With pick 55, you went Trey Harris. So let's just say you got rid of it. Yep, you would have had another pick. I understand that. But you would have gone Trey Harris maybe at 55 and then gone a random running back at 60? I don't know. And who knows, the Lions might have given you a bunch of third-rounders, but you guys were doing just fine in the mid-round all by yourself. Trey Harris at 55, Jamari Caldwell at 86, Kyle Kennard in round 4, Keandre Lambert-Smith at wide receiver in round 5. You got great value there. So I think it needs to be known that it was a good thing you stuck. And if Amarian Hampton ends up becoming what I think he could become, there has been running backs that have traditionally been good, but Harbaugh doesn't hate using multiple backs either. He doesn't hate using multiple backs. Hey, maybe it'll be a crazy one of those things where both running backs get over 200 touches. I don't know. Him and Najee Harris. I don't know. And then you go out and you get Rocket Sanders. We've talked about Rocket Sanders so much on this channel, it's embarrassing almost. I really do think, when you look at some of those names that I just talked about, the Cam Scatterbos, a lot of those names that would have been available at 55. Because Travion Henderson's gone. Quinshon Judkins, gone. The guys that were still available, I can make an argument that I had Rocket Sanders right up there with that. So you got your elite running back. You got another running back that is just as talented, physically gifted as another one you would have gotten as an undrafted free agent. I'm telling you right now, you almost made a huge mistake, but you didn't. Because it's a professional organization and they know what they're doing. And that is why they didn't pull the trigger, because they knew they had something special in Amarian Hampton and they knew they had the pieces in place already to be a contender immediately. All right, hey, thanks for watching. Keep checking us out. Hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the next one.